Today, Andre and I are talking about parenting and some of the challenges he and I have faced along different points of our parenting journey. Whether or not you're a parent yourself, hopefully you can relate to some of the things we discuss here, like managing your own emotions, arguments, and getting someone smaller than you to do something they don't want to do. Anyways, thanks for checking us out. Now let's get started.
I mean, we live in a world where things are somewhat, I don't know the word, it's not complex, but I'm glad I don't have kids that are in school right now, like elementary and high school. I'm scared for my, in the future, I'm sure I'll have grandchildren, but
Yeah.
I think parenting is a lost art now. Yeah.
It's a struggle. I'll say that much. And it's not like it's one of those things where I went into it thinking like this is going to be super
It's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
Right.
Like I knew there would be challenges. I knew there would be things that I would struggle with.
Yeah.
Nothing prepared me for this. This is beyond what I ever would have anticipated having to deal with, especially at like this age, like 5-6 years from now. Yeah, no, yep, no, that makes sense. Right now, what?
You know what I think part of it is, and it's not to say, I'm going to say something, don't take it the wrong way. I think parents don't have time to be parents anymore, to be honest with you. And then you add in external things, i.e. for me, divorce, remarriage. You still have to be a good parent. And I think that people just get wrapped up in their own crap and they lose sight of that. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, like
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Because I think even those of us who feel like we're doing a pretty good job of like spending time with our kids and trying to like be engaged and stuff like that. I mean, I sat here the other week and was talking to my kid and my 10-year-old, and she was like, I said something about having to go out of town next week. And she was like, you were just gone all the time. And I'm like, well, like, yeah, I have to travel some for work, and I've had to travel a little bit more recently, and we've had a couple extra trade shows this year, so I get it. I was like, but like I usually try to travel 1 week and then be home for at least a week, and if I have to travel again, then I'll go the next week. But I was like, does it feel like I'm gone all the time? And she was like, yeah, it does. Like it feels like you're just always gone. And so it's like even being there more than 50% of the time to them doesn't feel like you're there,
Yeah, I remember having a conversation. We've talked about this before. When my daughter like talked to me for 3 hours, and I realized I put work in front of my family, and my wife and I were having problems, on the verge of a separation or a divorce, and it's because something's off. Like, well, for me, it was in the past. It was like a different time, but we get caught up in there's a balance. Our career shouldn't define us, number one. But number two, you have to eat and you have responsibilities. How do you find ways to be you? And you being like a husband and a father, right? In that order, right? And I think back to a time, and this may be helpful for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I worked for McDonald's, I worked a lot. But on my calendar, I always blocked out, like on Sunday, I would go to church, we'd go to a movie, or we'd watch a movie at home. And I remember one time we would do a calendar review, and my boss at the time, this is even when I was a store manager. He said, man, I really respect the fact that you block out that time to spend with your family. I wish I would have done that. And he was divorced also. It would have probably prevented, it would have probably prevented me from getting divorced. Then I fast forward to a few more roles, same conversation where my boss is like, so you really block out time on Sunday to do that? Yes, I do, because it's important to me. And then I fast forward, just this past week, my daughter went to Biscuitville with some friends to catch up, and she calls my wife and says, "I remember when Dad would take us all. We're talking like the whole posse to like we go to church, then we go to Biscuitville." And she goes, "I just sat there with my friends, just thinking of that." And then she was a pal, and she goes, "Dad spent a lot of money every week just to take us all because it was expensive." And I'm like, so how do you keep yourself focused on being the parent, doing the right things? Because at some point they may not admit to you, or later on, the time you spend with them and how you're consistent about it, they do remember. Those times are important. When I went to go see our oldest son in Florida last month or the month before last, I mean, he was talking about the trip we took one year for Christmas. The present was we went to, like, I think either Disney or Universal. All of our kids talk about that to this day. So I didn't get it right all the time, but I knew what the end result was I was looking for. And that's something I always tell you. Like, you just have to figure out how do you look down the road as opposed to where you currently are. I don't have an answer, but I can tell you just that the things that I've tried to do consistently over the years, my adult children can remember them, and they kind of respect that and value that. I don't know what's different, to be honest with you. And we have friends that their kids in my little buddy's age group and older, they're all going through something. And I don't know if the correlation is COVID in 2.5 years, 3 years of uncertainty. I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if it's what we call entertainment now, which is connected devices, or how do we, claw back to some type of normalcy? I don't have the answer, but I'm grateful I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, because it sucks. I mean, the whole COVID thing, like, I remember going through that with her, and there were so many times that she was like so worried about the pandemic and like what was going on and whether or not people were going to, like, her and her family were going to be okay, and trying to, kind of calm that fear, but at the same time, like, not being like everything, like nobody's going to die, right? Like,
right.
But like, hey, we're doing everything that we can to keep ourselves safe, and generally we're in good health, so it seems like we should be okay. But yeah, it's just like that even that in just everyday life, that fine line of kind of being honest, but at what point are you oversharing, right? At what point are you burdening them with too much, with more than what they can process for their maturity or their age level?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I've shared with my kids my career struggles and just so they're prepared. I was just thinking as we we're talking that there's something. My eyes water. So I'm not crying. My eyes watering. So
No,
like, I'm not getting sensitive.
Something in the air.
Yeah.
Hank, are you crying?
Nope. Just watching the movie.
Hank, you're scaring me. What the hell is going on?
I'm okay. Please continue to look at the
There's a
screen.
lesson I learned a long time ago. So there's a joke in my family that I have a favorite kid, and they always say it's Chris, and I'm like, it's not. Like, I don't have a favorite, and I'll tell you why. There's I was reading and studying like the book of Genesis about Jacob and Esau. There are a couple of fine points or finer points in that I've carried with me throughout like the years. One of them was that Jacob he liked to do things that weren't hunting, and he wasn't like the outdoorsman like his father. And he was, not that he was a soft kid, but the things that he liked to do were, between both children, the parents fostered those skills within the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that fascinating, but because as parents, mine included, they try to shape you to be what they want you to be, as opposed to fostering your skills and the things that you're interested in. So that was something I took away from that. And I've tried to, with all my kids, to do that. Like, I think that's part of what we're missing in our society. And it's not to get, quote unquote, biblical with people, but there's a nugget to that. I often see that parents want their kids to be something that they were not, or they're trying to live vicariously through their children. And that could lead to disaster. If your kid is really good at something, even if it's like when Chris was doing music full time, I didn't understand what that means to be a career, but I also didn't discourage my son in doing that. Yeah. So I think that's part of what the problem is. So I would say COVID could be a factor. It could be how we're looking at our kids and how they grow to be adults. It doesn't mean that you shower them and spoil them. I do have some spoiled children, but that's not the point right now. But are we taking the time?
Which children would you say are most spoiled?
I would never say that.
We'll find out who his favorite is real quick.
And it does not surprise me that everybody says that Chris is your favorite, just to be clear.
Sure, but it's not true. I don't have
No,
a favorite.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it doesn't surprise me that everybody thinks that.
Well, the interesting thing about that is each one of my kids, they and my two oldest are like, they're my stepsons, but they're my sons. I never call them my stepsons. I want to delineate because
you literally just called them your stepson.
Well, because when you hear the ages, you're like, why do you have kids when you're 15? I'm like, I didn't make him, but he's my son. Each one of my kids have things that I'm interested in that I can bond with. So, and that's, I have an engineer, I have somebody that's in marketing and really brilliant at that, by the way. Somebody, two of my kids are passionate about music in some shape or form. One, like the two of them are into philosophy. Although I hate philosophy, I like to actually have a good conversation.
You're more into philosophy than you think you are, just to be clear.
Let's stop with the lies. One of them is very strong-willed and can defeat me with pure logic, because the counter is, now I actually turn into like a savage because I'm like, I just have to defeat you. I just because it's interesting to see.
That's all it took all this time.
You're not trying hard enough.
Obviously, not using logic correctly.
Well, you're combative and you use wit, so there's a hole in your logic because of the wit, right? So
no, that's fair. That's fair.
So I think that one of the things, so learning that lesson early on for me as a younger father helped me to kind of look at my kids in a different light. And I think that we don't do that a lot. We're trying to craft where they go to school. We're trying to craft what they're interested in. We don't really care what they're interested in. We want to push them and guide them into things that we're comfortable with. So I would.
Do you really think that that has changed in terms of like the percentage of people who are parenting like that from, say, like my parents' generation or your parents' generation?
I think it's gotten worse.
Okay. So you feel like it existed, but you feel like it's gotten a lot worse since.
Right. because
More
opportunity
reason.
is more scarce than what it was during their time frame. You could go off the
So I guess, how do you define opportunity, though?
if you look at the fact that there's a lot of kids having to move back home because they can't afford to be in the world, or a college degree is not the golden ticket that it used to be. So opportunity is becoming more scarce. So I would believe that the natural tendency for a parent is to, quote unquote, prepare their child for the real world and protect them. They're over course correcting.
So
It's a big oversteer.
So you feel like parents in general are too protective.
Yes.
Interesting.
I
don't know. I struggle with this at home.
I see nothing wrong with letting your kid fall down and scrape their knee in life.
No, definitely not.
You do. I bet you $100 you do. I bet if I were to
I don't know. I think it's pretty funny when my kid falls down and scrapes her knee.
well, in life, not just
Hey, Nelson, he's really hurt. I think he broke his leg.
I said, huh?
not just like in being uncoordinated, but in life, right?
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's like it sucks, right, to have to watch your kids struggle. I mean, we talked about this before. Like, my oldest was diagnosed with ADHD, and has struggled in the classroom to kind of like be able to maintain focus. And
Right.
she's incredibly smart. Like, she knows this stuff, but it's just a matter of actually like doing it. And the ADHD leads to massive impulse control issues where she doesn't really think about the long-term consequences of things. And I know, like, at 10, it's not like I'm like, what is this ultimately going to do for you 10 years down the road? But it's like, if you run out in the street, what are the chances you get hit by a car, sort of thing?
That's fair.
Like, some level of self-preservation would be nice to see.
Well, all right. So I always struggle with the ADHD thing because one of my sons, a psychiatrist, said, went to thing and they're like, oh, ADHD and all the symptoms and I have ADHD then.
Sure.
And what's interesting about that, and I'm not trying to say, misdiagnosis. What I would say is that I was able to realize that, and I believe I was in third grade. I bought a memo pad, like it was like 25 cents or 15 cents at the school, store.
Book fair?
Yeah, no, school store. So I was going to a school that had a school store if you needed to buy supplies. I don't know what prompted me to buy it, but I went to class that day and the teacher, as they normally would do, would say, today we're going to learn this. And I wrote down the 3 things that they said that we were going to learn. And I taught myself how to stay focused until I learned the 3 things. You know me well enough and work. I write down everything. Mm-hmm. So I probably over the years have taught myself how to manage whether I believe in ADHD or not.
Whatever issues you were dealing with. Right.
How to manage that myself without medication, and you say Andre's very focused. No, I'm afraid of the alternative of like what happens when I don't stay focused on things, when I don't write things down. If I don't, there's a lot of things where like my discipline comes from a lot of things, but one of the biggest things it comes from is that I don't like the alternative of me not being disciplined. Like that feeling of uncertainty and lack of control scares the shit out of me.
And I think that's a big thing that at least my kid is missing.
Okay.
Right? Because the lack of control, the lack of focus, like, does not seem to bother her one bit.
And might I add, my
Yeah.
parents were very unforgiving of low results.
Mm-hmm.
So let me add that. So maybe that was a motivating factor for me that she doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean,
And I was afraid of the consequences of having, like, not meeting the mark.
see, and like that's the thing that I really struggle with as a parent is consequences. Like, all right, so I was telling you about this before we jumped on, but I'll share it with the rest of the audience. So last night, my kid is playing video games. She's talking to some friends of hers on like Facebook Instant Messenger, FaceTime thing, and I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen, and like 10 minutes go by, and there's a knock at the door, and she runs to answer it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm gonna answer the door." I'm like, "You don't answer the door by yourself. Did you invite somebody over?" No. Open the door. Her friend that she was talking to is there, who she apparently invited over because her friend doesn't have Xbox Live, so she couldn't play online with the other two. And so it's like, on the one hand, I get logically like where, that all, and she's like, I finished my chores and we're just sitting around. Why wouldn't this friend be able to come over? But of course, I'm sitting there like, what the did you? I'm sorry, what? Like, no, your friend can't just come over out of nowhere. Like, I just. So, like, I'm okay. I try to make the consequences be logical to like what the transgression was, right? It's not like, you left the lights on, so you don't get a dinner or dessert for a week. Like, I take your light bulbs out.
You got to go big or go home, dude. What are you talking about?
Well, sure. So on this one, I'm like, because I mean, I'll be like, I was so mad. Like, it was, like on the old cartoons where the pressure gauge would get to a point and then it would just start spinning in circles. Like, I went past 0 to the point where I was so angry. I didn't yell. It was like that.
That's actually a good thing.
I mean, yes, it is. But like, and so the consequence that I came up with was, all right, you're grounded for a month.
I love it.
Right? No play dates, no friends over. Boom. And you lose technology for that time too, because that's what you used to coordinate the play date, and that's like what this whole thing was basically about. My kid proceeds to tell me that I'm wrong.
Really?
in giving her these consequences and this punishment, and tries to negotiate a lighter sentence.
You know what I would have done? I would have doubled it.
Doubled it.
I said, okay. So
I did say when I levied it, I said, and I reserve the right to add additional time or other consequences.
first of all, it's not a negotiation.
It's not. I was just stating the fact to her, like, look, it's a month, and I could make it longer if I feel like I want to. So don't fuck around. And then she fucking fucks around.
My wife would get.
So yeah,
I hear you, but it's for the betterment of mankind, right?
what is?
It's you're not negotiating. You're their parent. It's not a negotiation. Right. I don't negotiate with
terrorists. Right?
Well, in the meantime, and as usual, go fuck yourself.
No, we don't negotiate with terrorists.
I don't negotiate, but I also there's no room for that as a parent, right?
Right.
Because
the moment that you admit that you are not the almighty supreme authority in that household.
No, you want to what I think the way I look at it is not that. I look at it more in effect of, I need you to understand what you did damages the family, and that is unacceptable. And from that baseline, there's no negotiation.
Right.
Like, I don't have to say anything else. If you decide that you want to like push back and tell me, hey, I appreciate what you're saying, but there's a rule. You can tell me anything you want to tell me as long as it's respectful. Respect means
Yeah. That's the other fucking problem.
right? And if what you're doing doesn't respect like how I'm treating you, what the rules are, all the things that respect encompasses, then you're out of line. And we're not talking about it. The reason why I said that you're so upset and you didn't yell is a good thing, is you have to be. I'm always, for the, a good majority of most things, I'm very tempered. I can be a complete asshole and still sound calm like I am now. This is me happy.
Yeah, especially when I pick on your Raiders defense.
Sure. This is me happy. This is me sad. This is me upset.
This is just there's just Andre.
Yeah, I don't need
That's
to.
the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't need to. Like, I never give anybody there's no room for that. It's the boundaries that you have to be consistent about. Being a parent, you have to be consistent about the boundaries. We were just talking to one of our friends a couple weeks ago, and she was like, yeah, I yell at the kids all the time. I'm like, yeah, and that's why they don't listen to you. They don't know when you're actually upset about something. Like, being upset doesn't mean you have to yell. Like, yet raising your voice means there's a monocle of danger, and you need to respond. In my mind, right? Getting bent out of shape doesn't help you with your children because they don't understand the difference between upset dad and like whatever, like this, there's a consequence dad. You don't want to blur those lines. I just don't blur the lines. I'm like, look, I didn't like that. This is what we're going to do. And do you have any questions? And then I move on. I have grounded, like my wife used to get mad. If you get grounded in my house, it started at 30 days. Like it started with a 3 and it ended with a 0. And I took away everything. I'm like, dude, you're going to go to school, you're going to come home, and you're going to eat dinner. That's all you got. Like and you're going to watch a family movie on Sunday because you're not messing up my Sunday because you did something wrong. So it's to focus on what was wrong, but not to intermingle that with things that should be normal in the family. I think
I just want to say that's brilliant.
What?
I like that. It's brilliant. I like it. I like that. It's like, it just makes sense. I see exactly what you're saying, that like flying off the handle and screaming and yelling is only complicating things.
Yeah.
It's not making things any easier.
It never does, right? Because once you start raising your voice, the kids are like, I got you.
Right.
Like, you forgot what you're upset about. You forgot what I actually did. And you're going to try to associate everything to the thing you forgot. And I got you. No. I refuse to give anybody that leverage on me.
Can you tell me, did you ever slip up?
When I get,
like, there are times
I've gotten pushed.
Okay.
And when I get pushed as a parent, I double down. Like, okay, so let me pause. I'll do that. Let me pause because I want to make sure you remember that I understand what you did. And then I circle back around to blah, 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 blah. And on top of that, since we're here, it's going to be, you're grounded for 2 months. Because I know the games, they're it's not that they're even trying to play games. It's just that they are trying to, it is self-preservation. They don't want to feel the pain or uncomfortableness of whatever they did.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with the consequences.
Sure. But I want them to.
Yes, because that's how life fucking works.
Right?
Right?
We're both like, right?
So I'm not going to. I'm never going to get bent out of shape about. Yeah, I get pissed off. I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing. Like, you really think this does not turn out better for you by you challenging me right now?
Right.
But since you did, let me reciprocate. And I want to acknowledge and go back to, this is what you did. I understand that. I appreciate the fact that you're being honest with me about what you did. It's still unacceptable. And this is what's going to happen. And because you thought you can manipulate me, we're going to add this onto it. And my wife will be like, yo, you go in. You can't ground somebody for 90 days. I'm like, I just did. I'm going to sleep fine. I'm not going to even worry about it. Just like,
See, and okay, so that's the other thing that I do ultimately struggle with. I fucking second guess myself on this shit.
no.
I don't know why, but I was sitting there last night. I'm like, is it really am I being? And then today, this morning, she doubled down and was like being just a total asshole during trying to get ready for school and stuff, and just throwing major attitude and talk about respect. That's one of the main fucking issues that I keep running into. And I think you're right that the way that I've been reacting is what's leading to this disrespectful
because
she knows that that's what gets under my skin.
Bingo. She knows. She's not an idiot. She's just
No. I mean, she's a really smart kid. She's just using it for evil instead of good.
I mean, but it's human nature, right?
It is. I get it. I mean, and I do remind myself of that she's 10, she's growing, she's learning. This is all part of that process. Again, I just expected to be dealing with this 5 years from now, not
it's better to deal with most of it now, because hopefully
that's
5
fair.
years from now, you guys have a better relationship. She'll understand the boundaries. The reason why the boundaries aren't clear is because she knows that she can push your buttons, right?
Yeah.
There've been times where I've had challenging moments with my kids where it's we're at an impasse, and I get that. I'm not going to buckle. You know who plays Switzerland is my wife. And I'll tell her, I'm like, hey, here are the facts. And you cannot expect me to withdraw my position. I'm just not going to do it.
Okay, but do you think you need a Switzerland in the family dynamic?
Yes, you do. Because sometimes it's not the principle that's important. It's the relationship that's important. And if you keep blurring that time and time again, you can damage the relationship. And I'm guilty. If I say I don't like something, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it.
No, you're not.
I said
until I finally walk in one day and I'm like, look, dude, I get you don't want to do it, but this is what I'm being told we have to do. And you're like, I still don't fucking agree with it, but fine.
Right. I want to make sure that I'm not going to concede.
I want it on the record that Andre Powell said he was against this idea from the get-go.
But to be fair, looking back on those issues, I was right. So it's not the point.
I mean, you don't have to fucking bring that up. That's not, yeah.
There's there's sometimes that you should not concede, but if it's a relationship that's important to you, it's not that you concede. It's just that it's not worth it at the end. I've already proved my point.
Is that technically a compromise?
It's not. I don't see it as a compromise. I see it as...
Aren't you compromising your original position by changing it?
No, because I restate my position as to how I feel about X. And I have to decide what's more important, right?
Yeah.
And then I move on. I don't forget that whatever happened. I don't set myself up that way, but I'm like, okay, I can put that to the side. And if I happen to be right in 2 more cycles, I'm going to be right. And I'm going to like told you that shit was going to happen.
I mean, I think it still technically sounds like a compromise.
It's not a compromise.
I'll let you have it. I'll let you.
A compromise is admitting that what I think is important is no longer important, and I'm never going to do that.
I mean, wouldn't a compromise be giving up anything that you originally held as a firm belief in order to achieve some sort of common ground?
And I also said that I'm not doing that. The relationship can proceed without even addressing what was broken, right? What's important to me is the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have to bring up where we were disagreeing at just because it's not like for the sake of the relationship. I don't need to talk about it. And if you ever bring it up and be like, no, I still don't agree, and I still feel this way about it,
that would be a mistake.
Right? So it's,
and I'm just being an asshole because you talk about how much you don't believe in compromise. But
and I don't. I truly do not believe in compromise.
I know you don't.
I think you short yourself when you start to compromise things. We are capable of having disagreements and moving on beyond the agreement without compromising. Like with relationships. In business, it's just no deal. And I'm just going to move on and not even blink. But with personal relationships, you should be able to say, yeah, that's a sore spot. We don't need to visit that again because we just go around in circles. So outside of in my public life, I will move on and not flinch. In my personal life, I will salvage the relationship if it's truly important to me. And most of my personal relationships are truly important to me. I can avoid the hot spots because they're not going to be the driving force. But if you were ever to ask me about that hot spot, I would be like, no, I still feel like that was blue and you kept saying it was orange, and I fucking don't agree with you. But we don't have to talk about that. so and that's okay, right? Like, I mean, that's a true relationship, right? It's like, hey, it was still fucking blue and you kept saying it was orange. I think you're fucking wrong. And I think people
are likely that they're colorblind.
Or they're color. Yeah, it's but I think the reason why people are so quick to compromise is because they don't know how to. They want the other person to feel comfortable. Case in point, I didn't compromise. I avoided a situation in a public setting for the sake of other people feeling uncomfortable. And it was awkward as hell to me. Like everything in me said, say this. But when I looked around the room, I'm like, you're going to make a lot of people uncomfortable and you're not going to have the time to completely express how you feel about what you're saying. And that would have been unfair to the people that didn't know me intimately. That would have not gone over very well. And I'm okay with that. I reached out to somebody that was kind of, that knows me more, closely and said, hey, I just want to let you know, I was thinking this. I didn't say it though, because that would have been weird. So, yeah, but I think parents should do the same thing. I think you should, you love your kids. You don't have to agree with them all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't. And I don't compromise or negotiate with her when it comes to those things. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess in our family dynamic, I was previously playing the role of Switzerland. And I guess I'm somewhat concerned that I don't think there is a Switzerland.
And that's okay.
In the equation right now. Well, I asked you earlier if you needed a Switzerland, and you said yes. So that's why I'm saying
you do, but if you don't have one, you have to be able to, all right. So if you don't have a
You have to be your
Switzerland,
own Switzerland.
you have to be able to make sure you're not talking out of a place of emotion all the time. If you don't have a Switzerland,
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And
Yeah.
I struggle with that too. I mean, that's, like I said, I mean, and you know this, like you're parenting a small version of
yourself
ex
and your ex
and yourself. Like in this specific dynamic, right? Like, and the parts of yourself, yeah, that's frustrating as hell. The parts of your ex, you're like, fuck, I thought I got rid of this. Like,
it's not
nope.
It's not their fault though, right?
I know it's not. And but it can be very triggering in the moment.
Sure.
And I have thus far struggled to kind of recognize that. It's only here more recently that I've started to.
You want to hear? You want to hear
able...
a true confession, a true public confession? My ex-wife, I love her because she's my kid's mother. There have been recent events that make me realize that I don't really enjoy or like a lot of parts of her. And I've had to literally, and we've not been together for well over 20 years. It just dawned on me because of recent events that that's how I feel.
Yeah.
That's okay. So you need to accelerate. How do you get to that point of yeah, there were good parts about our relationship. She's my kid's mother, but
yep.
I need to be honest with myself and realize that that's it.
Yeah.
And it was not easy because, she's my kid's mom, but if I'm being super honest,
right.
I'm good. I'm good on all the shit she's doing. I don't need any of that because that's not the person I want to be. And that is okay. And this is a recent, and this is a true, a recent realization I just came to, because I will tell anybody, that's my kid's mom. First of all, that's my kid's mom. Don't talk shit about her because that's a problem. Second of all, that's my kid's mom. But who she is today, there things that she's done and she's displayed, that's all she is. I love her. I love her because she's my kid's mom. And I'm done with that. I love my kids because they're my children. And they are grown into beautiful adults. So being divorced complicates things. It doesn't have to be. And I think for me, the key was understanding that I never came to that realization and to that resolution of I don't think who she is today is, because part of us in our mind thinks stupid stuff we're angry, right? I'm no longer, sure. I've been far from her enemy for years now, but I finally have said, no, I kind of get it now. She's literally just my kid's mom. And I need to keep that in what it is, separated from my children. And that's, and maybe the reason I came to that conclusion now is to help you to realize you got to let go of that, you got to just realize they're not they are of the same person, but they're not the same person. And those memories and those quote unquote triggering moments has nothing. They're two separate things.
Yeah. And you're right. If nothing else, it's incredibly unfair to, hold that against your kid.
Right.
Because like you said, it's not their fault, right? Unless your kid is the reason that you got divorced, in which case it's definitely their fault. But
I'm not touching that with it.
I didn't mean you, but I'm just saying people in general.
Yeah,
there's some shitty fucking kids out there. Trust me, I met this one the other day. Brian, if you're listening, you fucking know. You're a fucking piece of shit, Brian. Your dad doesn't even fucking love you. And he's not your dad.
You're in a bad place. I'm sorry, Brian. Chris is on some shit tonight. But I'll be honest, like, you know, there are things that when we step back or what, like we step outside of the problem and we're honest with how we feel about it, we're doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Like 1 and 1 never equals 4. Like I'm sorry. Like, and we're trying to make it equal 4 because it makes us feel better.
That's some fucking GOP math right there.
Ooh, well played. I like that. But my point being this, like, you know, parenting is hard enough. And I think that as a collective, COVID's a problem. I think as a collective, people are too busy to be parents. Stop, right? I think that parents go from 0 to 60 for no reason and they get angry, and your kid's not your enemy, right? It doesn't mean you have to be your kid's best friend. You know, my kids will be the first one to tell you, like, yo, sometimes my dad gets on his shit and there's nothing, like, yeah, I'll be stubborn, like, yeah, and, you know, blah blah blah. But they know that I love them, and you know this. Like, I can call my kids and talk to them about anything, or they can talk to me about anything, and it's a good relationship. Because at the end of the day, what I want is for my children to not. I don't want them to hate me. Like, it's just weird to, you know, like
I mean, that seems like a pretty reasonable goal. If I'm,
but think about how many people have a bad relationship with their parents.
Yeah.
Right. Or they have all these unsaid things with their parents. So here's another public confession. My biological father, I haven't talked to him in almost 15 years, maybe 13. I don't know. Or actually, that's not true. My youngest brother had me talk to him a few years back, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. He's a piece of shit. And I told him, I said, look, the reason I don't talk to you is because I don't want this stuff in my family. The things you do, I want that nowhere near my family. Like, it's not healthy for me. It makes me as a parent look like I don't care about my family because I keep allowing you to do the things you do around me and my family. It's better that we don't talk. Look, I don't want anything bad for you. We just can't talk. Don't call me. Don't email me. Nothing. I want nothing to do with you. But I hope you do well. I'm fine. I don't want my kids to ever feel that way about me. So, you know, I take that stuff very seriously. I would tell my mom, my stepdad is my dad. He raised me. My biological father, he just happened to, like, get my mom pregnant. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's true. But my parents raised me to not let people walk all over me. So if my parents tried to walk all over me, what do you think I would do? Like, you raised me to not let people walk all over me. Why are you trying to walk all over me? Like,
yeah.
So I don't want my kids to not like me. I don't want them to disrespect me or to not have any respect for me. And I believe, and I know I have a good relationship with my children. They're all adults. And I know a lot of people that have adult children that their kids don't even talk to them.
That's I keep trying to tell my dad. I'm like, you're just lucky I still talk to you. No, I've never said that.
Yeah.
No, but it's funny because, you know, for like a long time, I was very much like the classic people pleaser growing up, like peacekeeper,
right.
You know, just like everything I can do. And you know that just from watching me interact with every other person I interact with. And it's only in the last like year or so that maybe last couple of years that I feel like I've started to make some progress. And what's funny is that the area I've made the most progress in terms of being just kind of like more open and honest is with my dad. And I don't know that he necessarily, like, I think it was a shock for him at first, especially, and granted, like the first kind of incident of it was an argument over the renovations that were going on at my house. And I had a certain tile that I wanted to use in the bathrooms. And it wasn't that he didn't even like the tile. He was just like, because it's the same tile that you have on your backsplash. It's that glass tile. And he's like, that would be great as like an accent or something, but you don't do the whole shower out of it. And I was like, I want the whole shower out of this glass tile. And he was like, it's going to cost you more money. And I was like, I want the whole shower out of the glass. I just like over and over again. And he kept kind of like pussyfooting around with like the quotes and getting the tile guy and all this. And finally, like we get one morning and he asked me again, he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. And he's and I'm like, I don't like, we just got into this big argument. And I remember I don't remember like everything that was said. But at one point I said something to him and he responded with, don't talk to me like I'm an asshole. And I said, well, stop acting like an asshole. And that was basically where the argument ended, because we'd both reached that point of yelling at each other. And so that was like the kind of one incident. But I've now gotten to the point where when stuff comes up, instead of letting it build to a point where we get really angry and say stuff like that, I'm able to like actually like, hey, this thing that's happening or this thing that you did, I didn't like the way
isn't
that
isn't that so much easier?
Yes, it is.
I love you, first of all, but I don't understand. Like, first, you're one of the nicest people I know.
Well, yeah.
Fun fact.
That's what you think. That's just because I'm always making you happy.
I have like Chris is like one part of my circle of 3, right? I've noticed a personality trait of all 3 of them. They are nicer than I am.
Andre's just smart enough to surround himself with nice people.
Yeah, I would never, or I don't think I could naturally be as kind as the 3 of you guys are, right? Which bothers me. I aspire to it, but I probably it's never going to happen. 2 of you are, I would say, are low-key people pleasers. And it's detrimental to, like, in my opinion, of your relationships, right? Like I genuinely, I would rather you be like, yo, this guy just told me what he felt. I mean, a few weeks, not trying to put you on blast, a few weeks ago, we had like I was in Florida. He calls me up. He's like, are you mad at me? I'm like, no, totally not mad at you.
But see, I had to make sure, not because of like, that wasn't even my people pleaser shit. I was all up in my head about that because that was the first time that I could recall that you and I kind of like
disagreed.
Well, not even, we're kind of mad at each other. Like,
but I wasn't even mad.
You know, like, okay.
Here's what I thought. I thought that what you said, I didn't agree with. And if I didn't say anything, that was me co-signing it. Right. That was it. I wasn't, I wasn't mad. Just kind of like, nah, I don't agree with that. I just want to be clear. I want everybody that may, if you ever like release episodes, know that I don't agree with that. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't change our, like I said before, the relationship's more important than like anything else.
Than that.
Right.
Yeah, than that silly argument. Right.
Like, and that's how I live my.
Who fucking cares that Joe got divorced? Like, he's not even fucking here. He's like, I'm going to be here every week. I mean, fucking one time he shows up.
And he can't keep his word. Fuck that guy. So my point being is like, it's like, what was I saying? Shit. So because you brought up Joe.
There I go, non sequituring this fucking podcast into oblivion.
So my point being is like I don't care about I want to make sure that what I believe in, my principles, are what they are. And I want to be consistent in that. It doesn't change how I view you. It just means like, no, I just want to be clear that you understand where I stand here. That's important to me. I want people at the end of my life to be like, he may say some really like bluntly honest things, but he said them from a place of love. He said them because he was being honest. He said them because he cared about you. At the end of the day, right? There should never be like a column C. Like Andre like this, he didn't like this, but there was column C. I don't want a column C. So that's where you have better. I believe that's where you have better relationships. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No, I mean I think you're right because that leaves nothing to question, right?
Right.
It's like you said, everybody knows where you stand on everything. And it's not, and sometimes I know for you personally where you stand is I don't have an opinion on that because it doesn't affect me. Right. And
that one's hard.
And
it's hard to communicate to people. People don't believe me when I say that. I'm like, I never really think about that. It doesn't cross my mind. That's why I don't believe in compromise. There are things where it's like, okay, if I have to weigh these two things, have I communicated what I wanted to say? And can I move on? Yes or no? If it's a no, then let me, knuckle up and get my muscles relaxed because we're going to go back from round like 22. But if I'm like, I think I've kind of said what I had to say and I can move on, I'm done. And I think that is a much better place to be in relationships for me. It may not work for everybody, as opposed to like low key having a column C and getting pissed off about everything and things build up.
Yeah, because that's where like the passive aggressive stuff and all of that starts coming out.
Right.
And that doesn't help anything.
Maddie, my youngest son, who was on here a while, I don't remember what episode. Maddie is
episode 93. God, I can't believe you don't remember that. I don't know if it was actually episode
You're just like making up stuff. He's like, bro, I don't know. Sure, Chris. He was very passionate about legalizing marijuana. Mm-hmm. And we never saw eye to eye to that. I was like, look, babe, I just want to tell you, this is why I see it the way I see it. I'm not telling you to, do whatever. I'm just saying this is why I see it the way I see it. And we moved on.
Right. You're not telling him he needs to change his opinion.
Right.
Right. You're just explaining why you have the opinion that you have.
And you can't convince me to not take the facts I've seen and make them now irrelevant because of expedience. That's weird. I'll move on from that. So, but I want to make sure you understand why I don't agree with what you're saying. And then I'm fine. I'm like, sure. We're going to tote Blaze. I don't give a shit. Blaze. I don't give a shit. But I don't agree. Like it's okay. It's fine for me. I'm like, I just want to let you know that I don't agree. I'm not co-signing that. I will not do that. So, and then what's cool about that is, it was this year actually. He's told me he understands why I see it the way I see it. So, being able to kind of, being consistent and being truthful to yourself and truthful to others is, I think that's missing also. And so if you can't do that in your public life, you're definitely not doing your personal life with your kids. Yeah. And you don't have to do it from a place of like anger. So anyway.
Yeah. Just for posterity's sake, it was episode 187, apparently.
Because you just had to prove a point. You've been hanging out with me way too long. 187, yeah. And I don't know, man. Being a parent is, it actually probably saved my life. So I had my first son when I was 19. Fun fact. I used to not think I was going to live to see 21. So I do believe that, having my first son, like, it made me realize there was more to life than what I kind of saw. It's hard. It's scary. And, I remember thinking when Chris was like, I was in the waiting room with his uncle, and I often think, I really do often think of this day. And I love Corey. Corey was a great guy. I was sitting in the waiting room at WakeMed in the dark. It was dark. And I've got my hand like holding my head. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm scared." He goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, I don't want to fuck up this perfectly new human because I don't have a lot of good examples to go off of. And I remember him saying, he put his like hand on my shoulder, goes, "You're going to be fine." Corey passed away some years ago. But good guy, and he loved my sons like with everything he had. But I often think that my kids probably saved my life. And when it's not about an expose of what was Andre doing that his kids saved his life. It was not always good. Where my head was, where my heart was, it was not always good. So I cherish, and my parents got divorced. And I was raised by a single mother and all these things. I wanted to be more than what I saw. But I ended up getting divorced, but I still wanted to be more than what I saw. So I went to football games. I went to the things I could get to. And with my other kids, I was engaged. I want to be a good dad. So my priorities are be a good husband, be a good father, be a good brother and friend. That's it. If it falls outside of that, and I've said this multiple times, I'm not doing it. If what you're asking me to do breaks what that is, I want nothing to do with it. If it means I have to change to be those things, I will change. Because it proves to me, if I feel that I need to change, that I'm not going to meet my goal. My life goal is to be a good husband, be a good father, be a good brother, be a good friend. And if I have to change to meet that goal, I will change. And that's where that's where people, I don't think they have the right goals in. I'm not saying it's you, right? I'm saying like, right. You want to have a shorter measuring stick to how you're leading your life and how you're living your life. And that's for me, that's it. Everything outside of that, it's unimportant. It directs and guides how I lead my life. Literally. And I kid you not. When you ask me, well, what made you, well, it's, if I'm not able to do that, I'm not being a good brother, right? If you call me, I don't answer the phone or call you back, I'm not being a good brother. I promise you. If my kids are like, hey, can you come down and like see us in Florida, even though I hate Florida and I hate Rhonda DeSantis, I'm not being a good dad. So I will figure out ways to make like that is the measuring stick. So yeah, right now you're going through something uncomfortable and icky. The question is like, I use the word icky. That was poetic.
What the fuck? You were doing so good there, and then you just like, you're going through something uncomfortable and icky. Icky, icky, icky.
The question you have to ask yourself is in your measuring stick for your life, right? When you die, what do you want your daughters to remember about you?
He had a shit ton of money.
Well, good luck with that.
No, I mean, I want them to remember the times that I was there. The times that I coached their teams, the times that I took them to practice, the times that we had family dinners together.
We're so in May of 24, we're going to one of our son's friends' wedding, because he was one of the kids that came over, ate all of our food and shit. But when our son's friends would come over, they would be like in awe of the fact that we ate dinner. We did the same thing whether they were there or not. We talked, asked questions, and they're like, "Our parents don't do this." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. This is the thing. Put your phone away." Like, we're talking, we're asking questions. What'd you learn today? I made it a point to try to be home when I could. I didn't get it right all the time, but what makes me feel good is that my kids remember it. Their friends remember it. That's the long play. That's the upside. And you're not going to get it right all the time, but you just have to understand where, where is the compass showing true north? And if you can figure that out, you can veer off every now and then, but you'll always get back on course. I had an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday. They were asking me about my career, and I don't open the entire book of my career, but I did tell them that there are things I'm doing right now that help me to get where I want to be. And where I want to be is literally where a couple weeks ago, my wife and I were both working from home, and it felt great. Like, the fact that we got up a little bit later, we exercised, we had breakfast, then we did our thing, the lights were on, right? I want that every day. I don't want that, on those random days where her calendar syncs with my calendar. That's what I want. That's what drives the real things in life drive me to make those real things part of my everyday life. And aside from feeling sorry for myself, I started thinking back and doing a mental checklist of all those moments where I've gone through life and I'm like, I like that. I want to see more of that. And I've seen more of that. So it proves my point of maybe we're focused on the wrong shit. Right? And somehow I've been blessed enough to live more and more of the life I've envisioned in my heart, as opposed to what people are telling me to do. People often get amazed by the fact when I say, I would never take a job because it offers me more money. That just sounds weird. They're like, what? You don't want to make this? I'm like, no, for the sake of what? Right?
In exchange for what, right?
It's weird. Like, I don't want to do that. When I started working at E-Area, I made significantly less money. My kids have told me in years past, and we've never talked about this, they never saw me happier. I was miserable working at McDonald's. Like, yeah. And they're like, whatever happened, Dad, you were happy. But what that also did, looking in real story, I'm only happy when I'm writing software. Like, if I have a job, it's got to be writing software. I hate doing anything else. I would go
To be fair, that was also the day that you met me, so it's very likely that because you met me, you were happier.
Take your flowers, man. But
I will.
And you had the greatest Spotify playlist ever that I never expected. I'm like, this guy knows Kool and the Gang. This guy's listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Let's go. So, but think about it. Like, could I make more money doing something that made me miserable? Yes.
Yeah.
And
people do it every day.
And sacrifice what?
Right. Sacrifice that time with your wife. Sacrifice the time with your kids. Sacrifice the ability to travel to Florida. Like, that's what I hear you. I think it's so much less about finding a job that pays you what you need to be able to live the lifestyle that you think you want. And it's more about finding a way to make the lifestyle that you live kind of fit in with whatever it is that you end up doing that is fulfilling.
Right.
Because you can, I mean, think about it, right? If you're working 9 to 5, if you're lucky enough to only work 9 to 5 because your boss isn't like, well, you get an hour of lunch, so that's not your time. That's my time. So you need to put in 9 to 6.
Right. Yeah.
We all know somebody like that.
Not naming no names.
But but if you're working 9 to 5 even, right? That's 8 hours of your day. If you're awake another 8 hours to get 8 hours of sleep, then half of your life that you're awake, you're spending at work.
Right.
So why would you do that why would you spend that time doing something that makes you fucking miserable? And not only makes you miserable for those 8 hours, but makes you miserable for the other 16 hours in the day, including the 8 that you're asleep.
I don't get it. I will not. One of the people in my circle told me one time, I was in my mid 20s, late 20s, stop chasing a paycheck. Never, it didn't dawn onto me until I left McDonald's. I had somebody tell me years before, try to spend less than you make. And I have always worked towards that. So when I take those two things together, don't chase a paycheck, spend less than you make. I'm not worried about if I get a job, I'm not worried about a salary. I know the number I need to make to keep the lights on. That doesn't interrupt my life. So that's weird for a lot of people. Well, you got to make 6 figures. I'm like, do you? Most people I know that make 6 figures spend 6 figures.
Right.
Right. So
yeah, I mean, the more money you have, the more money you're going to spend.
But do you have to? Right?
No, you don't have to.
I mean,
you definitely don't have to.
And it's not about living within your means. It's about understanding what you're going to do with the money that you have. Understand
and prioritizing things again, right? Like in your career, you're prioritizing your own personal fulfillment and happiness over a specific dollar figure, right? In your life at home or your lifestyle that you live out, even while you're at work, it's about, again, identifying what are the things that are most important and, fulfilling those needs, and then figuring how to make do with what's left.
It's super simple. Doesn't have to be
barely an inconvenience.
So I say all that, and it ties back to parenting. If your priority is to, for me, be a good husband, be a good father, be a good brother, be a good friend. Sometimes I interchange that with great, right? Great's, it's a high bar, but I'll start with good. It keeps me grounded. Yeah. It shapes how you look at your career choices. It shapes how you make all those other decisions that are hinged on that. I never say I want to be the best employee. I do believe that you should be a good steward of what you're responsible for. I do believe that. That is a fundamental tenet of my life. But my overarching that also ties into being a good husband and father, because it sets an example for my kids. It shows my wife that, the journey that we're on, I'm part of it. It shows my siblings that, there's I can help them the more I'm able to be a good steward of the job I have. I can be a good friend to people by giving them advice from things I experience. So it's a tenet, but it's not the overarching theme. It's connected. So my point being, maybe my point is what's the true north you're trying to reach, right? If you haven't established that, then shit, you're going to struggle being a parent. So let me try to make sure I collect all my thoughts. So one, I do believe COVID had something to do with where we currently are. I do believe that. I don't know what it is. I don't understand the correlation, but I do believe that, because throughout my entire friend group in various ages of children, there is something that's off and it's wrong. I don't know what it is, that is the common denominator. 2, I do believe that parents are too busy to parent. But why I believe that's true is because maybe parents haven't taken the time to realize what they want out of their life. And they're impacting their kids because of that lack of clarity. 3, I believe that parents should foster the skills and the interests that their children have. I think that is very important. And 4, maybe we just need to kind of, if you have the other pieces together, we're not chasing after things that make us feel good for the moment, but don't have any long-standing value. Yeah. So I think those are I think I kind of went back through all my ramblings. Did I do a good job?
And that, I mean, 4 legs is a pretty sturdy stool, my friend.
I nailed it.
I'd sit on that stool.
So, yeah. I just want to say thank you for all the people that subscribe and listen to the Chris and Andre Show. We're very glad and grateful that you listen and you've subscribed. We're going to get on a regular cadence. Please go to the Chris and Andre Show, or chrisandandreshow.com. Subscribe to our audio podcast. We are on fireside.fm, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, obviously. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, you can probably find the audio version. And yeah, we really appreciate it. I'm very grateful and humbled, to be honest with you, that people actually enjoy the podcast. And if you like what you hear, hit the like button, leave comments. If you have suggestions, always just let us know. We'll be glad to answer that. We do involve and engage in the comments, even the weird ones. So yeah. Chris is just standing there stoic.
I don't know what you just were like, I'm going to do this thing and didn't tell me what you were going to say. So, yeah, what he said.